Hello, I'm Jared Diamond, and welcome to Guns, Germs, and Steel, Jane Eyre edition. Today we're going to be discussing how the metaphorical guns, germs, and steel have affected Jane Eyre's life. Let's take a closer look at how Jane has lived through her interactions with John Reed, Mr. Brocklehurst, Mr. Rochester, and St. John Rivers, also known as St. John. Follow me.
First, Jared Diamond is exploring the early years of Jane's life, where she lived under the oppression of John Reed. He is representing the guns in this episode of Guns, Germs, and Steel, for he has been very violent towards Jane in her childhood.
So Jane, tell me about some of the interactions you've had with John Reed.
Oh, he was a horrible man. He beat me mercilessly as a child. Would you like me to show you an example of this?
That would be great. I feel like it will illustrate the pain and suffering you went through.
Rat!
Oh, that looks horrible. Let's watch it again in slow motion to really see the effect of this man in your life.
You rats!
So can you explain for us how John Reed has influenced your personality?
Well, he taught me to rebel against the norms of society. I learned that life is unfair and cruel, and I became my independent self, and I figured out that I didn't want to conform to the norms of society.
Wow.
So John Reed has greatly affected Jane, but what other men have done this in her life? Jared Diamond has decided to investigate Lowood, the school Jane attended as a child, along with the headmaster, Mr. Brocklehurst. He is representing the germs in this segment of the episode where he was involved in the time of sickness in this institution.
What was living at Lowood like?
I'd say it was a very low period in my life.
Ah, very clever.
There was a wave of typhus at the school, and my closest friend, Helen Burns, was one of the victims.
Oh, I'm very sorry. That must have been very traumatic. How did Reverend Mr. Brocklehurst help to stop the spread of the sickness?
He didn't do anything except for preaching to us about being holy enough. He also refused to feed us and cut off our hair.
Oh, how awful. What effect do you believe this had on you?
I think it really taught me to be independent. It also taught me some harder things, though, like how the world doesn't really care about you and that you're really just out there on your own.
It's truly tragic.
Jared Diamond investigated Lowood School and discovered evidence of the heinous crimes.
My inspection of Lowood has brought me to one conclusion. Jane Eyre has been humble on her experiences here at this horrendous place.
Jared Diamond has discovered the awful truth of Jane's childhood. The chilling conditions of her boarding school reveals a great influence on her person. However, Jane says this is nothing compared to the influence of Mr. Edward Rochester and Mr. St. John Rivers. They are the steel of this episode, for they believed they were the strong, sturdy men that Jane needed in her life.
Let's continue on with Mr. Rochester. How did you meet him?
I was a governess to the child that he took in. I met him on his way back to Thornfield when I spooked his horse.
What a way to meet. What was your relationship like?
It was very confusing. I felt as though we had a true connection, but he often seemed to like another girl. When he wasn't doing that, he would often only be spurring on my love for him. It was very hard for me, but I stayed strong through it all, and eventually we became engaged.
Sounds like quite the complicated relationship. Now, I heard there were some more very shocking obstacles in your relationship. Would you mind describing them to me?
Well, the one major obstacle was that he was already married when we became engaged.
How shocking.
It really was. Especially since it turns out that he was keeping her in his attic the entire time. She was insane, and she tried to kill many people when I was at Thornfield.
Oh wow, that must have truly destroyed you.
Yes, it really did. I left Thornfield and ran far away, which is where I met St. John.
A secret wife? This secret must have truly broken Jane, yet another sad story to add to her already tragic life. But is there any possibility that she could see some positivity with this new man in her life, Mr. St. John? Diamond has an exclusive interview with the missionary to find out exactly what happened between him and Jane.
Thank you so much for meeting with me.
Of course.
So can you tell me what you feel exactly happened between you and Jane?
Yes. My sisters and I took her in when she was in need. I gave her a job as a teacher at a girls' school I founded. We actually discovered that we were cousins after our mutual uncle died and left Jane almost all his money. She was generous enough to split the money with us, and I noticed her great character and realized she would be the perfect wife to a missionary, which was my profession.
Oh.
I asked her to marry me, but she refused.
Why do you believe she left you?
I believe she still had feelings for a Mr. Rochester.
Is it true that even after all that happened, Jane could still have had feelings for Mr. Rochester? Jared Diamond has decided to find out.
Why did you leave the company of Mr. St. John, who would have made a suitable husband?
I realized that I did not truly love him as more than a brother, and that I needed the passion that Mr. Rochester brought into my life.
So did you return to Mr. Rochester then?
Yes, and to discover that Thornfield had burnt down and his wife had been killed. He had been severely injured in the fire, losing an arm and his eyesight.
What a tragedy.
Yes, but it was also a blessing in that we could finally be together. We married soon after, and I have never felt happier in my life. I understand now that love is worth going through so many hard times, for in the end you will have unspeakable joy.
What an incredible journey for Jane. Jared Diamond has uncovered just what an impact the men in Jane's life had on her. There is, however, one more step in this journey.
Mr. Rochester, I'd love to hear just exactly what your feelings were towards Jane.
Yes, I love her very much. I love her very, very passionately. I was willing to marry her even after I was already married.
Yes, of course. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Why do other people have so much eyesight and I, Rochester, so little?
Jared Diamond has dug deep and discovered the many details of Jane's life relating to her male influences. He has discovered that she has had mostly negative experiences, but in the end found ultimate happiness in the man, Mr. Rochester. Thank you for joining us on this episode of
Guns, Germs, and Steel, Jane Eyre Edition. Okay.
2, 1.
Thank you so much for meeting with me.
Of course.
So
We can just cut this middle part here.
Oh yes, but here's the thing. I'm not a man. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Why do other people have so much eyesight and I, Rochester, have so little?